Hey everyone, welcome back to Riffs Across Generation. I'm your host, Andrew, and I'm here with my co-host,
Eli.
and we have David and Wes from the band KRIGSGRAV. And hopefully I'm saying that right and I don't make a fool of myself trying to pronounce your name. So David and Wes, if you just want to say hi to listeners and a little bit, I guess, about yourself so they can put a voice with a name, know
Sure.
who's speaking.
This is David. I'm the founding member or whatever from way back and the drummer for KRIGSGRAV. And yes, you're saying it perfectly, by the way.
Nice. Look at that. we have a long history of not pronouncing things correctly on this podcast. It's kind of the running joke.
Hey, bands don't make it easy on you either, most people.
Right.
No.
Bands and names. Some of those European names we get tripped up on a lot.
Yeah, and I'm Wes. I play bass for KRIGSGRAV. Yeah, we've heard much worse pronunciations of that name. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's
too many consonants next to each
yeah,
other.
Yeah. KRIGSGRAV it was the first initial blush when I saw your name come across. And I think we ran across you with, I think it was Clawhammer. Is that your PR company that you use? Yeah. So that's how we got introduced to you guys, actually. So yeah, it came across and I was like, oh, I've never, stupidly, you guys have been around forever and I've never ran across you guys in all the years listening to music. And then we thought, hell, well, let's bring them on and try to get some new listeners for them, because what you do is pretty unique. And we've been jamming on your new album since it came out. I mean, since you've been dropping singles on it. So we want to get into a little bit of the history of KRIGSGRAV, but we don't want to go super deep because I know you have like 152 albums or something like that. It's very extensive. So the band started in as a project in 2004, from what I understand. What was the reason for the project, and what do you think what was the end goal of that original project?
So yeah, it was autumn of 04, and I had already had like a high school band that I was playing in that was primarily a thrash band. And we didn't do a lot. We did more covers than originals and stuff like that. But over the course of high school, my best friend Chris, who later became the first vocalist for KRIGSGRAV, he was kind of getting me more into more extreme music, because that was kind of the divide of my high school band. Was the other guys were kind of going more proggy, and I was wanting to go faster and more extreme. And so I was always kind of late to the party when it came to that. So my friend Chris would get into Emperor or something like that, and I would think the production's too bad and I can't get into this. And then 6 months later, I get the point. I finally see what he sees. So I was getting more into black metal just because of his influence, and just kind of messing around with that kind of style of riffing and stuff, because I'm a drummer primarily, but I at that time and still play multiple instruments, was getting better on guitar. And so I just kind of proposed to him, not as a full band, but I just said, hey, just for fun, would you, if I write some music, some black metal, would you sing on it? Because I can't. To this day, I can't growl, I can't scream, can't do any of that. And he kind of could a little bit. And he just said, I'll give it a shot. And the end goal at the time was there was none. It was just a pure hobby, just for fun thing. And we did a couple covers, like a Venom cover, Carpathian Forest cover, and just but once we had written like a couple originals, then it became like, we could probably actually make this into something like a project, where we just continue writing our own stuff. And then it just kind of went from there, where it was always kind of in the background, because me and Chris ended up starting another band fresh out of high school that was a more of like a melodic death metal thing that was more of our primary focus. And so KRIGSGRAV was there. It didn't even have a name yet, but it was always just this background thing that we didn't focus on much, but I was always kind of writing stuff for it and recording stuff for it at home. And it took its sweet time until probably 2010 or 11, whenever it became more of a true focus.
Nice. And the name, has it always been, the project always been called KRIGSGRAV? It's pretty unique that you went with I guess it's a Swedish word that means war grave.
Right.
So a band from Dallas, Texas, taking on a Swedish thing was pretty unique. Why did you gravitate towards that as a name?
Just the old switcheroo. The amount of of Scandinavian bands that have English names, because of course they also speak English over there. I decided, kind of fool some people here. We'll use a Scandinavian name, and that might inadvertently buy us a bit of legitimacy as well, because people might see that name and think, oh, this is going to be some Norwegian black metal or Swedish death metal or something, and then they might check it out solely because of that, and then just find something they like out of it. But it wasn't always KRIGSGRAV. We kicked around some real stereotypical stupid names back in the high school days. I think we were trying to call ourselves Black Winter, and then we saw there was like 4 other bands with that name, and we had another Swedish name that we thought sounded real evil that turned out to be a word that means like a pleasant village in the woods, basically. Like
Nice.
nothing scary about it. So once we realized how dumb that was, we changed it. But no, Krigsgrave became the name in 2006. So it was like 2 years into the project when we finally kind of settled in on that name, and it just rolled off the tongue well, and we kept it ever since. So
Do you guys still think that switcheroo is happening now when people see the name of the band?
yeah, I think so. 'Cause
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, we've been around a long time, but we don't do an awesome job of getting ourselves out there that much. So we've got a good fan base going, but there's a ton of people out there that have no clue who we are even this far into our careers. So I do think that it still probably helps us out a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we first discovered Krigsgrav, Stormcaller was our introduction to the band. We hear a lot of different black metal, death metal, doom metal, etc. And mix into that. My question is about the style you've evolved into. Is Stormcaller a style combination of all the band's work that has happened over the last 20 years or so? Or has the mix of genres always been present?
Wes, you want to jump in?
I think that's been more of a gradual thing for sure. If you kind of follow the albums throughout the years, like I think Looks Cop to Est and Kyrian Fields are kind of that introduction of the more melodic, even progressive, longer song structure. And I really think Stormcaller is a kind of continuation of the sound of Fires in the Fall. It's very just sort of building off of that. So I think it is. It's been a gradual progression to get to this point, and I think we really did a good job of like mixing doom and death and black, and still making something that's hopefully cohesive. I
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so we want to touch a little bit about on what the album sounds like, but we want to go back to just a little bit where you guys are from, the Dallas, Texas area. I don't know if it's Dallas, Texas proper, or if it's Fort Worth or somewhere around there. So I'm a little familiar. I lived in Oklahoma City for a while as a young adult, so I'm a little familiar with Deep Ellum, and this goes back to the early '90s. And it was pretty much a hot spot for Pantera type bands, a lot of DRI crossover type bands. And then, of course, Rigor Mortis and Absu came from that area. So I think it was a good, healthy mix back then, at least, of different genres and different styles and different crowds. How did that affect what you guys are playing and what you got into? And what is it like now? How has that scene progressed? Because I haven't been there in a long time.
As far as affecting Krigsgrav directly, I'd say it hasn't.
Not at all.
Because we very rarely play live, and it's because we're old farts. So we've paid our dues with our old bands and stuff, playing local show after local show, and it's a lot of fun. You gain a lot of good stage experience and all that. But we're at a point now where, not that we're necessarily above that, but it's just a matter of the time and energy it takes to do it. It has to be worth our while. Not to mention the fact that we're all kind of spread out a bit. So I am more on the Fort Worth side. Wes and Cody are about 45 minutes away from me. And then our singer Justin lives about 2.5 hours south of us in the town of Belton. So we don't see him, like physically see him, often at all. It's literally just a few times a year. But yeah, so we don't play live that often. So the Dallas kind of vibe, as far as the other bands, in the area and stuff like that, hasn't really played much of a role in affecting like our sound or what we're going for. We're not necessarily trying to fit into the scene or gain more fans from the scene. We kind of have a broader approach, I guess, of we want people from all over, to kind of pay more attention to it, and then we utilize more online presence and things like that than like a physical presence in the scene. The scene itself, um, Deep Ellum's been funny because you're right, that is kind of the hotbed of venues and things like that, and kind of still is, even though when one closes, another one pops up. It's a whack-a-mole of venues, but they're still pretty consistent in terms of booking metal. That hasn't disappeared or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. It sounds disparaging because a lot of these people are friends in other bands and stuff like that. But there really isn't much in the local scene that floats my boat, so to speak.
Yeah. So I
Yeah, we're
think
kind of outliers in it, and it makes it to the point where if we're trying to plan a show, it's like, who do we play with? It's like, well, we don't really fit alongside any local bands that I can think of. I mean, there's a few that are good, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're definitely odd ducks for this area. So
yeah. Yeah. Has it progressed more into like a beat down type crowd? I know a lot of markets, metal markets now, it's just beat down bands, and that's what people go see with
I mean,
very short attention spans.
you might literally get beaten down in Deep Ellum if you try to go to the show, but no, there's still, Texas in general has always kind of had this crop of like brutal death in the local scenes and stuff. So there still is a lot of just the all low gutturals and just how fast can you blast, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But there's some good ones that we're good friends with, like Worm Chasm and Sparrows are a couple that come to mind that are kind of more on the melodic side that are good friends of ours and everything. But yeah, it's definitely more so in that brutal death style around here, I'd say.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of our favorite tracks, which is Bay of Bargast. I thought the name of the song was interesting, given that Bargast means a spectral black dog from the northern English folklore, particularly in Yorkshire. It serves as an omen of death and misfortune. In addition to the song having a pretty cool title, the music of that song is awesome and interesting and has a good hook to it. At first listens, it seems to be almost straight ahead in structure. As many listens to that song and as many of your songs, if you listen closely, there's a lot of layers and things happening in the music. And how do you come up with that?
So that's one that I primarily wrote, but I took from others here. So first of all, the title, Bay of the Barguest, is basically like a call of the wild type thing. So it's kind of a, no matter how much we try to paint ourselves as sophisticated beings on this planet, when it's all said and done, we're just, when the chips are pushed to the center of the table, we're still beasts, we're still animals, and we can do horrific things to each other and to everything around us. So it's just kind of this primitive primal calling, I guess. But musically, yeah, that one definitely more straightforward in structure. I When I write, it's usually pretty basic. Since I'm in an apartment here, I can't record my drums. So I use a drum machine. We all basically do for demoing ideas. And for the most part, we don't collaborate that much. Truly, we kind of follow like the Cannibal Corpse method of songwriting, which is if you start it, then try to finish it. Um, so I play guitar, but I'm not a great guitarist. So I will write all the rhythm guitar parts. If I do have a lead guitar part that I've recorded over a section, it's basically just a stopgap. Here's where a lead should go. I put a lead here, but please don't stick with that because I have much better musicians around me in this band. So I encourage Cody to come up with a more interesting lead over the verse parts, which he did. Great lead, very catchy. His solo in that song is outstanding. We're waiting on him to do a playthrough video for that solo because it's awesome. But there's a riff towards the end of that song that I actually stole with permission from Wes, because at the beginning of this process, he had sent a whole slew of ideas that he had written like over the last few years, basically, and just to see if there was anything that we wanted to use. And there was just that spot in that song. I wanted to use this riff from one of Wes's ideas, and I just kind of played it lower notes and a different tempo basically, but the notes are basically the same. And it fit perfectly. We put a lead over it, and but you're right in terms of the layers. My songs, when I write them, they're fairly bare bones when they're presented. I can try my best to put some bells and whistles on it, but I'm not, this fancy of a guitar player. So it really doesn't come to life until we have that real guitarist flair on there from like Justin and Cody. Once Wes adds his bass lines, which he takes a lot of time with and takes a lot of pride in, and just all the layering of guitars, the effects on the leads as well, things that just make it sound big. The production, the mix makes it sound big, and it's just that song in particular turned out, uh, bigger sounding than I ever thought it could whenever I first presented the demo. So we're real
Yeah.
pleased. Yeah.
Yeah, that song's pretty awesome, and great work on that last catchy part of the song. Yeah, that ending riff is pretty cool.
Thank you.
The other one that really sticks out to us, I guess there's three total that we want to talk about, but the next one is the closer to the album, Womb Death Dawn. So it's kind of a two-part question for both of you. It's very much a doomy type death metal song ish. Black metal, of course, because that's I think where your base is at. Is it harder to play songs? And we've heard this from a couple drummers in particular, that it's harder to play slower than it is to just play fast and just go all out, keeping timing, keeping that big feel, and also as far as like the doom scene altogether, seems like there's a resurgence. And I don't know if you guys feel that or people have reached out to your music, but I think with Black Sabbath's big popularity that just happened with the passing of Ozzy, but then also like Paradise Lost and Aversion, Candlemass coming back somewhat, and even Solitude Aeternus from Texas down there. I saw was doing some spot shows, which was pretty cool. So two-part there. Is it harder to do the doom stuff and get that big sound and maintain the interesting parts of the song? And do you think that doom is making resurgence?
Well, Wes drums as well, so I'm curious your answer.
I do, yeah.
So
Yeah, but I'm not nearly as technical of a drummer as you are, David. I can blast very slowly. For me, I think all of your mistakes if you play a doomier style are very obvious. So you have to practice a different kind of precision. Like typo negative is some of my favorite stuff to play on drums because you have to know where all of the beats line up. If you miss one, it's very obvious. Whereas if you're blasting, you can maybe miss a couple and say, "Oh well, I'm back on, and it sounds fine now." But
absolutely.
uh,
Yeah, and I used to play in like a female fronted like rock and roll band as well, and I played bass in that at one point. I played drums in that at one point. But that's another one to your point, Wes, is that like some of those songs, they're kind of poppier songs, and if you screw it up, it's blatantly obvious that you just screwed the whole song up. But
yeah,
no, for me, playing slow just in general, it isn't really a problem, but it is harder in studio when you're doing it to the click. um, there is a certain level of restraint there that you have to show, but you don't want it to sound restrained. So that's the hard part. Like restraining
Yeah.
yourself is one thing, but you don't want to sound like you're just dragging and forcing yourself to stay on, a certain tempo. So it does get tough. But if I'm not too overly strict in the studio, so if I'm slightly off for one or two hits and then I get back on with the click, I'll just roll with that. I'm not gonna We'll make it too mechanical. But like the resurgence of the doom, as you said, um, I do think like you got some bands that have been kind of flying the flag all along, of My Dying Bride and stuff like that, who I love.
R.I.P.
Yeah, all right, all right, right. Um, but like, yeah, like you said, Paradise Lost, they've kind of ebbed and flowed with their styles over the years, and they've kind of locked back in on kind of a more classic version of themselves, and it has come back. But like Solitude Eternus, those guys are good dudes. Like John, the guitar player, has a record shop down here in Fort Worth that I go to on the rare occasion I have money to buy a record. Uh, but yeah, they as you said, did a one off. I think it was at Hell's Heroes or something like that in Houston,
Yeah.
which was cool to see because I love Candlemass as well. And I remember I used to be an intern at a recording studio in Dallas. And at the time I was there is when Robert Lowe was tracking his vocals for King of the Grey Islands, that first album that he sang on with Candlemass, and that was kind of a fun experience to just watch him tracking his stuff. But no, you're right, because the Black Sabbath thing, I've only really been mentioning more like Death Doom type bands and stuff like that. But no, you're right that the more retro vibe, like those Doom bands, have really been popping up a lot more. Honestly, for the last decade plus, maybe, that they've kind of been increasing in frequency. You got bands like Conan and stuff like that that are getting popular and that kind of have that retro style, which is cool. I enjoy it to a point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Solitude Eternus is giving a plug. I did a fanzine back in the late '80s, early '90s, and they were kind enough to do a couple interviews with me in the fanzine. So they've been one of my favorite bands forever.
Yeah,
So
they're just nice people.
yeah, shout out to them. Speaking of some popular type themes, I guess, in music, you guys seem to go, with exception of the doom part that's kind of coming back, you guys go against all the other norms that are happening in extreme music right now. You have longer songs, you have more complicated songs. Your songs aren't about ripping guts out of people and stomping it in the street or whatever. Do you think that and this may not even concern you at all, and it might not even be a thought, but do you think that holds back on your popularity of some, especially in the generation of small YouTube clips and 1.5 minute long songs, and trying to get somebody to sit down and listen to a 7 minute epic black metal doom death song might be a little challenging?
What do you think, Wes?
It might, but I don't think that concerns us. We're kind of doing this for the love of doing it, and any sort of exposure from this album has really been very organic. It seems like it's just we're amazed at how many people have listened to this album, and it's just awesome to see. Um, but yeah, I mean, thematically, it's not super easily digestible. I guess the album is about sort of a primordial nature spirit wiping out most, if not all, of humanity. So you know, if that sounds
Not
fun to you,
uplifting,
check
yeah.
it out.
It is also tough because we record a lot of layers. We honestly could probably scale it
Yep.
back a little bit, but we record a lot of layers of guitars and things, which I'm sure is a real headache for the mixing engineer to handle. But he has a very wall of sound mixing style, anyways. So when you have that much going on guitar wise and effects and stuff like that on the guitars and his mixing style, it could be a very in your face big feeling, album, and it can be tough maybe to digest it all in one sitting. I honestly feel like structurally, songwriting wise, we've reined it in pretty well over the last 3 records because the albums, Carrion feels not so much, but like Waves of Degradation from 2016 and then Leave No Path to Follow from 2018. That one was the most egregious in terms of just like we were uninhibited. We needed a producer to rein us in, but it was very long songs and just things that you look back on of like, why did we play that riff 8 times when we could have just played it 4? So whenever we did, it was a conscious decision, honestly, when we did the Sundering in whatever year, 2021. And that was the first album where we had Cody Daniels on lead guitar. And it just kind of reinvigorated things with his abilities, songwriting wise and guitar wise. And it was just a conscious decision from Justin, who said, I think we should focus more on trying to make songs like at least under 6 minutes. Like we're not, we could still write a 6 minute song, as but there were more songs that were under 5 minutes and stuff like that. There was a real focus on policing ourselves, songwriting wise. And that's become one of my favorite parts of the process now, is that we might, not even my own songs or whatever. It's just I'll ask permission. Justin might write a song that's 7.5 minutes, and I'll say, "Would you mind if I do an edit on this? Because I have an idea of how this can flow more." He's like, "Sure, go for it," and I'll just upload it and chop and splice and move things together and send it to see what the guys think. And then it might take a couple of attempts before we kind of find the structure that is most efficient and delivers what we want for a listening experience and all that. So like in Wes's song Atonica Wilderness, it was like a two-stage process there where he wrote it and sent it to us, and then I said, can I do an edit? Did an edit. They liked it, but Justin said, I want to do one more thing to it. So then Justin chopped and moved something else, and then we got it how it ended up being on the the finished product. So
Nice.
we do still have longer songs. You're right, and there's a lot going on guitar wise.
Yeah, I think we're in that kind of 6 to 8 minutes versus, the
12,
overindulgent 12.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we to us that's a huge improvement, but perhaps to
Yeah.
the average listener, they're still lengthy.
Right. Right. So I can speak for myself and then probably for Eli as well. We definitely like there's a few new bands and some old resurgence bands that come out and do that. There's a difference between hearing the song and listening to the song. So we feel like if just hearing your song, like it's on in the background, it sounds like that big heavy wall of noise, and it's like, oh, this is cool, whatever. But I think once you put it through the sound system or good headphones or whatever, you start hearing all the different background intricacies that are happening within the song, and we both really appreciate that.
Yeah. And Justin over the years has gotten good with I'm not even sure what you'd call it, uh, but like the little sound effects, I guess, little kind of keyboard
Mm.
things, bits of ambience and stuff like that he puts in the background of certain sections of songs, and it's usually that's not something that is like flown by the rest of us. He just kind of does what sounds right to him, and we usually say, "I love that." Whatever you put in the background there, it sounds cool.
Right. And again, just hearing it, you'll miss all that stuff. So it's not till like the fifth or sixth time we hear those songs, it's like, oh shit, I didn't even hear that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are that kind of albums that we like and appreciate as musicians. So that's awesome to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the tonic of wilderness, the song has a very old anthem-like feel to it, like a black metal-y big anthem feel. It's also fairly complicated sounding with cool time changes and some clean vocals. Can you walk us through how that was musically and lyrically written?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of always have gravitated towards a more folky style of black metal, which, can have a little bit of influence in the sound in KRIGSGRAV, but I try to reel that back in too. But that song, if anybody's familiar with like later era Bathory, they'll probably pick up on a few nods to that. Maybe not so subtle nods to it, but it's kind of just more paying an homage to that style of sort of anthemic, pagan black metal. 'Cause I think we all, to varying degrees, have like roots in that kind of music, playing in other bands in the past, and um, but yeah, I wanted a song that was a little bit more high energy, kind of a counterpoint to the doom.
It's a headbang.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah,
is.
absolutely. And Bathory makes its way to our podcast every like few episodes, I think. There's a couple local black metal bands here, Pontifex and Othelon are the names of the bands, and they've both brought up there's no black metal without Bathory. So,
well,
so
absolutely.
yeah, Bathory keeps returning to our podcast and popping up. So it seems to be the common theme. Last song we want to talk about is a little bit, and I think we just want to talk a little bit about guest vocalists on Huntress of the Fire Moon.
Yes. So Jens Rieden from Thierfing, we've even before we knew each other, we were all kind of independently fans of his. So like the older Nagelfar albums that he sang on, my old band from my early 20s, that melodic death metal band that I mentioned, we started to do a cover of I Am Vengeance from Nagelfar, and we didn't end up playing it anywhere. But anyways, that album that from that song that it was off of Shield, his performance on that was so good, and it's always stuck with me. So whenever he quit Nagelfar and joined Thierfing, already enjoyed Thierfing, so the fact that he was being added to that band was like, this is perfect matchup right here,
Nice.
outstanding. So been a fan of them for his entire tenure. So it was one of those things where last album, um, we've had some guests over the years. Like we had the Watcher from Fen, the vocalist from Fen, did some guest vocals on a song on Waves of Degradation. And so we had our first singer, Chris, who I started KRIGSGRAV with. He came back to do a section of guest vocals in the song Shadowlands on the previous album, Fires in the Fall. So that was really fun. He's in the Houston area now, so I drove down there. He's another one that I talk to often, but I haven't seen him in person in forever. So it was nice to go down there and record him. like old times. But so yeah, we're certainly not opposed to having a guest vocalist, and we knew we wanted one on Stormcaller. Weren't sure what song specifically. We kicked it around between maybe the title track or with Huntress. So we had a few names that we kind of tossed out, and then Justin just kind of had this epiphany of like, well, what if we ask Jens to do it? And it was one of those like, he has no reason to say yes, but what the hell, go ask him, you know? So he just, all he did, people keep asking us, so who did you have to ask? Who did you talk to? Like his manager or something to get him on? And we're like, no, we just sent him an Instagram message and said, do you want to do guest vocals on one of our
Nice.
songs? And he said,
Nice, very
I
cool.
guess he has a studio, like a home studio, and just said, yeah, just whenever you need them done, just let me know and I'll track it and send it to you. So this was like 5 months before tracking time. So we figured he'll forget all about this and stuff. So whenever it finally came time to like start tracking vocals and stuff, then Justin said, you know, crossed our fingers, said, are you still good to do this? And he's like, yeah, just send the song over. And so Justin set the lyrics and what parts he was going to sing. And he did an awesome job because he did it kind of unorthodox from what I would have expected him to sound like. He kind of did a little more layering and did some interesting things. He made some interesting choices vocally that I thought were pretty cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the great music stories, right? So those are the things you remember. It's like this guy who didn't have to do it, who just enjoys music. There he is, and he's stepping up and taking care of it.
Well,
Yeah.
go till you ask,
Awesome.
right?
Yeah. That's, and we hear that in industry, if you want to call it that, a lot. Like Nasty Savage came back and we recorded a new album, and he's known John Tardy forever, right? So the Obituary was influenced by Nasty Savage, and he's like, hey, you want to come do vocals on the song? And they're like, sure. So yeah, those stories are great, and we love hearing that. You know, people,
every metal band in Florida is inspired by Nasty Savage and Sabotage.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
like
Yeah, Ronnie's great. And he was, even we weren't a big podcast, now, but at the time we were even smaller, and he agreed to come on. So yeah, he's a great guy.
That's awesome.
And Tampa wouldn't be where Tampa is without them. I want to talk a little bit about your sound and going into the studio. I know you touched on a little bit where it's kind of the wall of sound, the bigness. We want to talk a little bit about what instruments sound like. And for me, it's kind of a pet peeve when I listen to an album. I like instruments to sound like instruments. So I appreciate that your drums sound like drums, where you can hear the different toms and you get your cymbals. It's not just click, 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 click. And we can also hear the guitars are separated from the bass. The bass isn't just a muddy background to the music, so we can actually hear all the instruments. In the modern era of going into a studio, how important was it for you guys to have your instruments sound like an instrument, and how difficult is it to actually get that sound out of a modern recording studio?
Well, I personally, this new album is the first one that I've ever what's the word? Quantized? Is that the word? So you can quantize your drums and snap it to the grid, which makes it sound like a drum machine. You can also quantize specific sections and things like that. I've never done any of that kind of stuff until this album. And it was just for like a couple sections or something to kind of tidy it up a little bit. But that's one thing that I didn't know people do. So it's like this whole 20 years of recording albums and stuff. I've always just tried to get my double bass as perfect as I can get it with the click. And if it sounds sloppy, then you do it again and try to get it better. And then whenever you see other people in studio and they just kind of do that's good enough, we can fix that in post, and that's never really been my thing. But I have always been fine with sound replacement in terms of like, I'll record at the very beginning of the session, I'll record samples of each part of my drum kit. So I'll just record a sample of a perfect snare hit or a sample of a perfect kick drum hit or whatever. And don't end up using the snare samples or the tom samples. It's more of a just in case. But for the kick, we'll sound replace the kicks, because obviously you can get kind of inconsistencies with, if you hit the kick a little softer there than you did before. So what we'll do is sound replace the kicks, but we'll use a sample of my actual kick drum. So it's not going to sound clicky electronic drum kit kick drum, it still just sounds like my drums, but kind of evens things out a bit with the bass drums. But to your point, we definitely want, it's hard. Mixing's hard because with all the layers that we send to this guy, for him to try to make everything that we want present be present and distinguishable is difficult. And I was really impressed this time around with the tone of the bass because we had so much going on guitar wise that for the bass to stand out the way it does, I think he did an excellent job with that. But you're right. Everything sounds like it should. Sounds like real instrument,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely important to us. We want it to sound like four guys playing music together, not like, a bunch of robots. And I think it's, it's an organic sounding album, but yeah, just massive sounding. Ove did a fantastic job with mixing it for sure.
We gave him
And
some
I even, I guess I wanted to mic up a bass cabinet and record that way. And Cody was like, no, we're going to go direct in. I'm like, okay. But then it sounded phenomenal. So
Yeah, I think your sound is. I mean, there's a lot of genres out there, but I think black metal and doom metal still use real sounds. So I think incorporating that into your sound is great. And so much modern music just sounds like Kanye West could have made all the death metal albums that have come out in recent years.
Yeah.
It's just all studio magic, all computerized. So,
It's
so
tough
we
to make
definitely
it-
appreciate that.
It's tough to make it cohesive because there's so many albums I listen to that you can hear every instrument clearly, but they don't sound together. Like it's just guitar over here, guitar over there, bass, drums, but it's like they don't sound with each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Let's talk about your artwork on the new album and how important it is to a band, given the assumption that the majority of people who listen to digital versions of your music and the artwork can just kind of be missed when you listen to the digital, you're not staring at it. What is your view on using AI in the music industry, specifically on bands to generate AI artwork?
I mean, it's a
Pestilence.
thumbs down. It is. I can understand why. It's the cost. It's all about cost. But it is a selfish choice because you're taking food out of these artists' mouths by taking the easy way out there. But I get why bands do it because it's just kind of a very kind of isolated, short-sighted decision of we don't have money to pay an artist, so we got to have a cover. Let's do this. So they choose to do that, and that's their choice. But no, I'm not in support of it. The cover for this album, like we tend to have stuff commissioned usually. There's an artist we like and we'll give them the idea and they send a mock-up sketch of it, and if we'll agree or disagree with the direction and give some notes, and then they're off to the races and send us when they're halfway through or something, they'll send us a little shot of it. But this time around was different. I was on Instagram and I follow several artists on there, and Adam Burke from Nightjar Illustration had posted, he does, as he does often, he posted a piece that he had finished and said it's available for license for $800. So you wince at the $800, but it was a really good piece, and we had already kind of come up with the title. Justin's kind of good at being our mission statement guy. He tends to kind of get a vibe for the demos of stuff that we're coming up with, and he'll come up with a title and kind of what the overarching like theme or feel of this album should be. And so he already had Stormcaller presented to us. So then it was just within a week or two, I'd say, of us kind of narrowing in on that title. He posted that work available for license. So I just kind of showed it to the guys. And Justin is more of a fan of having something commissioned, like from scratch. So I wasn't sure if he'd be on board with it, but he actually said, that's honestly pretty much perfect for what we need, color wise, and it suits the album title, it suits the music. Let's do it. So we drained our band bank account and paid Adam for the artwork, but it was worth it. It was worth it. A lot of people have had a really positive response to that art.
Yeah, we own some vinyl. We try to buy vinyl as often as possible, so we can definitely understand the draining of the bank account. But there's some pieces of art that you want that big vinyl piece on, and this is definitely one of them. I saw you guys did use some AI or something on it to make the lightning bolts on social media like flash a little bit.
Yeah, Justin wanted some sort of animated thing for
Yeah.
maybe it's when like a song plays on Spotify or something, and you see, I don't know, I don't know if it's on Spotify or if he just did it for the Facebook post or whatever. But yeah, he wanted a little pizzazz, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is something because I'm a little bit of a nerd. Let's talk about gear a little bit. I understand that both of you are accomplished musicians and you have many different instruments you play on. Are there any certain pieces of gear that you cannot do without?
Hmm.
Hmm. I don't know. That's hard for me to answer because I'll always be messing with pedal boards and trying new things out when we practice, and then we get on stage and I have a weird buzz or something, and I just turn off the whole pedal board and just pretty much play raw bass tone. So,
It's well laid
yeah,
plans, but yeah,
just yeah, a little bit of overdrive. That's all I really need. So,
can't live without.
yeah.
My pedals. I mean, as far as drum kits go, I don't care what it is. Like I have a nicer one that I use for recording and things like that. It's a Mapex birch kit that I love. It's like emerald green, and but that one stays home. I don't take that one out for shows and scratch it up. Um, but I have a beat up old Pearl kit that was given to me by a friend who moved to Colorado. I just said, "Take them; they're yours." I was like, "All right." So that became my workhorse live kit, and even though it's a bigger kit, I always strip it down to a 4-piece for live because that's all you need. Truly, I have my double pedal, I got snare, tom, floor tom, and a few cymbals, and that's really it. So I keep it really stripped down. But um, my pedals, it's insane now being closer to 40, thinking about all the money I spent on crap in my 20s that I'm like, how did I even have that? I don't even know how I have the money. But I bought these. I always use chain drive pedals up to that point, and I had like a Pearl double pedal and eliminators or whatever chain drive, and then I finally saved up the money because I wanted to get a direct drive double pedal, and of course, like the leaders of that game at the time are like Axis pedals and Trick pedals, which were like $900, and Pearl came out with one that was quote unquote affordable. They were 650, I want to say, and I've had to replace a few parts on them over the years, but it's still that same pedal that I got when I was probably 23. So I've had them for at least 15 years now, and but they're so smooth. Like the feel of them is just unmatched. But when I practice, I still practice 50-50. Some days I'll put on my chain drive and some days I'll put on the direct drive because I don't want to get too used to one or the other. I want to keep my double bass abilities on their toes. But for live and stuff into the studio, I need my direct drive, my demon drive pedals.
Nice. Nice. So before we get on what's next for the band, you touched a little bit about the scene there and how, being an older band, you don't get out and play much in the scene or whatever. Podcasts are similar to that, if you can believe that. We try not to be confined by the Tampa area. So it's really easy for us just to go out and talk to the same people about all the bands here because there's so many like bands here. So what's your approach being a band that has like a bigger audience to social media and how to get the music out there if it's not concentrated in what you're doing in the local scene?
That is the worst part of the whole experience. But
Glad I could ask it.
it's a necessary evil. No, that's kind of how we approach it is like this is our first time working with a PR company for this album, which has been wonderful to have them do a lot of the legwork of sending stuff out to specific places and things like that. And we can focus more on the broader, just posting on our social media pages. We don't have anything. We're not on X or whatever, or TikTok. Maybe we should be because our 18 to 25 demographic is different. Got to draw these kids in somehow. But no, we just tend to stick to Facebook and Instagram. Justin takes the reins on that because I don't know if you've noticed during the course of this interview, but I'm a very long-winded individual. I give long answers to things. So my posting skills are about the same. So he said, why don't I handle the posts more concise? But no, it's just his Justin's wife does marketing. So she has given us pointers a couple albums ago when we were doing the sundering of like what we should do as far as recognizing which posts get more engagement, do more posts like that, and do, playthrough videos and things like that. So we've identified over the years stuff that people seem to like to see more, instead of just posting for the sake of posting, although there is a fair share of that as well, just for staying in people's feed, which is an unfortunate,
Right.
thing you have to worry about. So no, we just kind of keep it consistent every day or two. We post something, and because now timing is a big thing. Like from when the album came out, we'll post about the album for a while, and then we'll probably shift gears into posting about other things until we get into December when everyone's posting their end of the year lists and wrap ups and things, and then we can start tagging stuff like that. And so we kind of project ahead with what we're planning on posting, but it's not necessarily hard. It's just this nuisance thing that we have to constantly.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate reality of making music in 2025 is that you can't just make the art. You have to be a little bit of a content creator too, I guess, which is funny because in essence, that's sort of at odds with the spirit of black metal altogether. So, but we try to, do it in a way that doesn't degrade the quality of the art, I guess,
I used to print flyers and give them, put them on the counter at the CD store and ask them if I can leave these here. Yeah.
Yeah, so I still printed up when we first started this podcast. I printed up business cards, and I was like, "Oh, we'll use these. Are great, whatever." But yeah, it wasn't until recently that Eli was in my ear about TikTok and all the music that was going on TikTok, and I was super resisting. I didn't know anything about TikTok, or whatever. But that's about 6 months ago. We posted some live stuff like the Melvin Show.
Yeah.
We posted a clip of the Melvins playing a song, and they had 65,000 views in like a couple months. So like, what is this all about? So we started posting clips of interviews, like this one will go up on TikTok and whatever, and we're getting a few thousand. But what we really noticed is that we're seeing a lot of that audience start gravitating towards listening to the podcast on different platforms. So we're seeing that come across because we're seeing our demographics drop from guys that are my age in their 50s down to we're getting that 18 to 23-year-old like graphic up.
Say that's
I guess we got to get on TikTok.
TikTok. Yeah.
It's the necessary devil.
I did a podcast for about 6 years, but I never prioritized building an audience. So I would spend all this time in preparation doing these episodes, and then I'd get like 14 plays.
Yeah. That's what we were expecting when Eli and I started this. It was just kind of like if he started getting into when he's around 11, we saw like Sacred Reich, and he was starting to listen to heavier music. And I was like, well, wouldn't this be fun if we did a podcast and we just kind of tied in new music and old music and whatever? So we didn't think anything of it. And then we interviewed this black metal band from the area called Voidrium, and there was a Swedish magazine that picked up ran a piece about the interview.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden our download spiked out of that. It's like, what the hell? And then we started getting involved in doing different projects, like where we were helping sponsor the Caribbean Vakken Metal Fest. So we did the one for Tampa, but we also did the one for Caribbean. So there's this platform out there called Viox that I didn't even know existed. But all of a sudden, this Spanish podcast platform blew up, and we started getting a ton of listens from there. So it's interesting to me that I know where I get my information from, but others, don't go on Spotify, don't go on Apple Podcasts, and they just have other ways to get their information.
Yeah. That's cool. And that's cool that you saw Sacred Reich at that age, because I took my son, he's been to a handful of concerts now, but his first concert, we saw Sacred Reich as well. They were opening for Sepultura. So that was his first go around.
Oh.
Nice. Yeah. Who are they with, Eli? Do you remember?
We saw them with, was it Carcass?
It might have been Carcass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Carcass store.
Nice.
So yeah, we're lucky enough to, most everybody stops in Tampa market. So we're lucky enough to, and it's all ages shows here, which is unique. If you go up the road to Orlando, it's all 18 and over. So Eli would never see a show if he lived in Orlando, but but here he gets to see a lot. So what's next for the band?
Oh man.
TikTok, I guess.
TikTok stardom. No, we get asked a lot because we, several of us are married, have kids, things like that. So touring is not that realistic. If we did, it would have to be a very short, we'll play 5 dates and come home type thing. Like Justin, with his job as well, he's kind of on call like 3 weeks out of the month. He only has a week really to play with every month, so it makes scheduling difficult. But we do, like I've always been fine with if they say the word, we don't want to play live anymore, it's fine. Like there are people out there who live and breathe the stage. Like they need to be. That's where I'm most at home, playing in front of people. And I like playing live, but I also am fine if we don't. Um, but it's one of those things where I kind of leave it up to Justin. His schedule is probably the most limited out of the four of us. So if he says he wants to play some live shows next year, and he's kind of putting the feelers out for booking some things, probably in Austin, maybe one up here, and we'll just surrounding areas and stuff. But it's always comes down to the material, because we're so in love with the new material that it feels criminal to not play any of it live. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we were with the last album as well. It was like we weren't sure about doing any live stuff, and then once it was out, then he's like, we got to play some of this stuff live. So that's definitely on the agenda. We did do whatever. I'll spill the beans on this. We did do a re-recording of an older album from 2011, because it was talking about doing longer songs and things like that. There's some production-wise, it was weird. It was for the album Lux Capta Est, and production-wise, it was pretty strange sounding. And songwriting-wise, there are some sections there that I'm like, why did I drag this section out for so long? So I'm like, I'd really love to tidy this up, because initially in 2021 we were going to do a remix and remaster for like the 10-year anniversary of this album that no one's heard, and and but the master files of it, like the guy who mixed it, all he still had, I couldn't find mine. I said, do you still have it on your computer? So yeah, I should. And he only had the vocals and the drums, so we couldn't do a remix and remaster. So that's when I think Cody floated the idea of like, why don't we just re-record it and do it exactly how you want it? And so we did, prior to recording Stormcaller. So early parts of last year, we re-recorded Lux Capta Est, everything except for vocals. He still needs to finish up some vocals, but I don't know if that would be released through Willowtip. I don't know about their willingness to release something like that. It's just a re-recording. So if we put that out next year, it would likely be kind of a self-released, maybe digital only, which feels it like a shame, but it's more of just getting it out there. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like we've been pregnant for the last 2 years. We just got to get this baby out and move on. But other than that, I mean, playing the occasional live show and that re-recording, we never stop writing. So we've already got a couple of ideas, that we're finishing up towards the next batch of songs and stuff. That's kind of
Nice.
the one benefit of not touring, is that we don't have
You keep
the pressure
writing.
of touring. We can just
Yeah.
keep demoing stuff at home,
Yeah. This interview's been great. We're very happy you guys agreed to come on. Before we can let you go here, we're gonna have you let our listeners know how they can support the band.
Follow our TikTok. So no, I don't know, because we have everything on Bandcamp. We're sold out of a lot of merch, and we need more money to make more merch. But a few things we still have there can be found at our Bandcamp or Willowtip's Bandcamp, our website for purchasing the album. Bandcamp is where we have all the digital versions of all of our discography and everything like that. But other than that, just find us and follow us on the social media, and anything new that we have going on, we're gonna throw it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did notice the 2XL and larger shirts have to be ordered through Willowtip, right? You guys don't have that in Bandcamp. So.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a strange little quirk that I found with you guys.
I did not know. So
Yeah. So very cool. Again, yeah, as Eli said, thanks for coming on. We'll look for you guys on TikTok. And if you just want to hold on a second, I'm going to end this interview and close it down and let everything upload. So hold on a second.
All right.